The echo from the woods. Late afternoon in the small town of Telluride, Colorado, the sky deepens into a dark purple spreading behind the snow-capped peaks. Inside the antique pine wood library, the golden lamp light softly illuminates the dusty bookshelves. The silence is so complete you can hear the rustle of turning pages, the slow scratching of pens, and the steady breathing of book lovers. Then, everything falls silent. The library door creaks once dryly, "Kayet." Nobody enters, yet right at the threshold, in that dim glow, a creature stands still, a bobcat. Its lithe body, its coat mottled in grayish-brown, blends with the aged wood. It neither snarls nor flees. It just stands there, a stranger visitor, as if fully aware that it is awaited. The whole library freezes for a moment. But what shocks everyone is not merely its presence, but the finely crafted, strangely inscribed collar around its sturdy neck, one that seems not to belong to any wild creature. Its eyes gleam brightly, as if carrying a message, a story long hidden. Where did it come from? And why would a wild cat wear a collar inscribed like a message? The strange collar. Ethan, the young librarian, quiet and introspective, with a deep love for nature, is the first to rise from his desk. He does not call security, does not retrieve a staff or any protective tool. He just quietly steps forward, moving slowly as though he fears startling the animal. His eyes never leave the creature, yet in his mind, a strange sensation begins to creep in. The bobcat does not flinch. It remains motionless, its gaze following every step of Ethan's. When only a few paces away, Ethan bends down and sees the collar made of aged silvered leather, etched all around with swirling patterns reminiscent of fir tree bark or mountain rock grain. In the center is the letter L, carved deeply and with such precision that from the moment he sees it, Ethan stops in his tracks as if struck by lightning. He has seen that collar before, years earlier, in a small wooden box his father kept hidden in a drawer. A keepsake his father never spoke of, yet always carried when going hunting or camping in the woods. The day his father went missing, that collar vanished too. The police said it was just an accident, that he slipped and fell into a chasm while deer hunting. But his body was never found, and now that same collar has reappeared on the neck of a wildcat, as if it is the first crack in the facade of reason. Ethan steps back. The bobcat's eyes do not blink, as though mirroring the shock and turmoil stirring in his mind. A part of him wants to deny any connection. Another part feels pulled by an invisible cord, a story never told, and the wild animal before him, like the first door opening into that world. Footsteps in the dark. From that moment, the bobcat ceases to be a fleeting apparition. It becomes a presence. Quiet yet persistent, it appears repeatedly at the library door, or glimpsed on the rocky slope toward Ethan's solitary cabin, never coming too near, yet never disappearing, always in sight and its gaze, questioning, pleading, beckoning. One night, Ethan parts the curtain and sees it standing silent beneath the old maple in the yard. Snow falls thickly, the moonlight fracturing across its coat. Its eyes pierce through the glass, touching Ethan's eyes like a silent call. He does not know why, but he begins to leave his shoes by the door, to keep a flashlight fully charged, to wait. Then, on a cold, piercingly sharp morning, the bobcat is gone. Only footprints remain pressed into the snow, leading step by step out of town, crossing the old wooden bridge, following the rutted dirt road northward to the abandoned log cabin on the hill, now overrun with vines and damp mossy scents. It is the place his father used to visit on weekends, where the two once pitched a tent and toasted bread by the stream. And it is also where his father was last seen. With his heart pounding, Ethan follows the trail. It is no longer curiosity. It is a compulsion, instinct, or something deeper, something older. Nearly entranced, he steps into the fog-shrouded forest. The wind rustles through the brittle branches like a sigh from restless history. The cabin emerges weathered, skewed, yet still standing. The wooden door hangs ajar, and inside pitch darkness. Ethan pushes the door. A gust sends a cascade of papers crumpling to the floor. Part of a journal, charred at the edges. The scent of ash still lingers. Messy scrawls, written in panic. There is something they do not want anyone to know if anyone reads this. Please believe, do not stay silent. A sound echoes from behind a wall, like a hand brushing lightly against wood, like someone who was there. Ethan turns. No one is there, only the wind, and a shiver of unease, like every step he has taken here was preordained. As if he is not the guide, but the one being guided. The bobcat is nowhere to be seen, but in the darkness of that cabin, Ethan senses it, not with his eyes, but with memory, with unending loss, and with a rising fear that his father's disappearance was never an accident. The Truth in the Cellar. Ethan returned to the cabin on the third day. This time, he brought a flashlight, a small backpack, and a steadiness that no longer trembled. The bobcat had come back, standing at the base of the hill as if waiting. When Ethan approached, it turned and walked away, not running, but leading, through sparse pine woods and paths covered in fallen leaves. The creature guided him to a small mound, one you might never notice without looking closely. Amid the dry leaves, there was an unusual depression. The bobcat pawed lightly at the ground, revealing an old wooden plank covered in green moss. Beneath it was a cellar door. The hinges were rusted, but still gave way after a strong tug. It was dark, cold. The smell of damp earth rose, thick enough to choke. Ethan switched on his flashlight. A creaky wooden staircase led downward. Some steps broken, he descended slowly, gripping the wall, his heart pounding like a drum calling spirits. At the bottom was a small room, built solidly with stone. No one was inside, only rotting file boxes, an old tape recorder, topographic maps of the northern forest, and dozens of covert photographs, all focused on one thing, the northern woods. Once a haven for wild animals, now on the verge of being destroyed to make way for an eco-development project run by a massive logging corporation. On the table was a stack of documents sealed in plastic. On the outside, in his father's handwriting, "If I disappear, do not let them erase everything." Ethan stood still. The stories his father told when he was young, about forest guardians, about honesty, about nature being home, now appeared as the other side of a flipped coin. His father had not gone missing because of an accident. He had uncovered a plan to devastate the forest, had collected evidence, and before he could expose it, he vanished. Murder. That was the first word to cut into Ethan's mind like a blade of ice. And the bobcat, the final photo in the stack, was old. A picture of his father standing beside a young wildcat, with the engraved collar marked with the letter L. Ethan recognized it, not just the collar, but the eyes of the animal in the picture. They were the same eyes that had been watching him these past few days. Part of him did not want to believe, but deep down, he knew. The bobcat was the very animal his father had once rescued and secretly raised before releasing it back into the wild. And now, it had returned, not just as a witness, but as a silent guardian of the forest, carrying a message from the one who was gone. Ethan stepped out of the cellar, the sunset light catching in his tear-soaked eyes. The bobcat stood there, unmoving. Their eyes met, man and beast, and in between them, a sorrow passed down, but truth that could no longer be denied. He knew he could not stay silent anymore, even if it meant danger, even if the truth might drag him into the shadows of powerful forces. Silence would be betrayal to his father, to the forest, and to the creature that had emerged from nature's deepest places to remind him, something still needs to be said. The final gaze. Ethan did not hesitate. He copied all the documents and sent them to an independent journalist known for investigating environmental destruction in the region. Every piece of evidence from the cellar, the maps, the photos, his father's voice recordings, even the scorched pages of the journal, was sealed and released gradually. Piece by piece, the story shook the entire state of Colorado. His father's death was reopened for investigation. The logging company faced a series of lawsuits, and the northern forest, once nearly erased from the map, was now temporarily protected. The day the first article hit the front page, the whole town seemed to stop breathing. That evening, Ethan sat alone in the library. The room was empty, but he did not feel alone. Something felt near, familiar, quiet. He stepped onto the porch, just as the last rays of sunlight clung to the mountain peaks. And there, on the far hillside, the bobcat stood still, its slender frame silhouetted against a deep red sky, like a shadow stepped out of legend. The wind tousled its fur. It looked toward the town, then turned to Ethan. No sound, no unnecessary movement, just that gaze, quiet, profound, as if holding a final farewell. Then it turned and slipped into the woods. No sound, no trace, only the engraved collar with the letter L remained, lying on the library steps. No one saw it being placed there. No one heard it fall. Ethan bent to pick it up, his hands trembling. The silvered leather was worn, but the patterns were still sharp, as if time had not eroded memory. He sat down, the collar resting in his palm, his eyes brimming. The feeling overwhelmed him, gratitude, sorrow. He thought of his father, of all the questions left unanswered. Thought of the wild cat that defied instinct to return, to guide, to protect, and more than that, as if some invisible thread connected him to something larger than himself. How did it know, and why me? No answer came, but Ethan understood. Some bonds require no explanation. They exist because hearts remember, because the forest keeps its vows, and because some spirits, even when turned to dust, will not let truth be forgotten. A call beyond species. Some stories cannot be closed with explanations. Ethan never saw the bobcat again, but every time he walked into the library, past the step where the collar once lay, he felt as though a pair of eyes followed, gentle, watchful, eternal. The collar engraved with the letter L now rests inside a small glass box in the reading corner. No nameplate, no explanation, just an old object, but anyone who sees it feels something beyond its shape, beyond its species, beyond death itself. In a world where people are increasingly disconnected from nature, the ties that bind are not always broken. Some memories root themselves in the soil, some emotions seep into the blood, and sometimes redemption comes from where we least expect, from a creature we thought was separate from us. That bobcat was not just a wild animal. It was memory made flesh, a message from a father, a call from the forest, something no words can truly express. But anyone who has grieved, loved, or longed will understand. Ethan understood, and when he closes his eyes, he sometimes still sees those eyes, the gaze of the creature before it vanished into the trees, leaving behind a silent message. Not just for him, but for all of us. Do not forget, some things are more sacred than life and stronger than death.